Joe, welcome to Locked In, man. A fellow Boston resident. The crowd
absolutely.
loves the Boston. I love the Boston
038,
accents.
baby, 038.
Because of the accent. That thing is killer.
Yeah. We don't recognize it, but yeah, I guess people, you either like it or hate it, love it or hate it,
Yeah. Now you were actually in that Ben Affleck movie, The Town?
Yes. I had come home from federal prison. I went away in 2000. And when I came home, 2010 when they were filming, and I came home the end of 2009, 111 months I ended up doing in total. So on the 10 years, you do 85% of your time, as you know, in federal prison. And, lost a little good time, which isn't, with that much time, I don't care who you are, it's probably going to happen. Yeah. So I lost some good time there. I did 111 months altogether. And when I came home, it kind of fell in my lap. It definitely fell in my lap. It was just one of those things. And, it was a great experience, and it's something that I normally there's certain people maybe, that I'll, sitting here talking or whatever, you're inquisitive, you're curious about it, you're asking. And, certainly, I like to share the story because it was a great experience, but, something that you kind of keep close to the vest because, where I'm from, it's very territorial, very cliquey. So it's like you gotta, especially being in the prison system, where around master manipulators or people, to this day, still I like to sit against the wall and just take everything in, so kind of feel the energy and I feel like with that, there's a lot of haters out there, a lot of people that misery loves company, whether they realize they're doing it or not, and it's hard to find genuine people or people that actually. If they are asking you, they're either pumping you for information, or they're, it's not coming from a good place, So with that being said, yeah, it was an awesome experience. It was definitely something that fell in my lap, and it was really good. I got to meet some good people, network or whatever a little bit. That was really the first time I was able to do that outside of the neighborhood or whatnot, coming home. But, after all that time or whatnot, I'm sure you can relate to this. It's like, and I wouldn't recommend anyone, doing any research on it, but the euphoria of coming home and there's no high. I mean, it's the best feeling in the world, freedom and, to be able to meet those, meet good people. And, it was just nice. It was good. It was different. And, it was good to do, it's something maybe in the future, it's something I never really followed up with, but, like you said, I know that they love, something about, even with Hollywood, they love the Boston thing. They love all that, so.
And there's that curious about people that went to prison and having the real life thing too.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's so cool that they had you a part of that because that kind of is similar to your story.
Right, absolutely. And Ben Affleck, the one thing that they had, he wanted it to be authentic, and that's why I think that, he kind of took a liking to me. And when I met him, we kind of hit it off, so he was looking for what he was looking for, he was doing his thing and he kind of just picked my brain and he did that with, a handful of people, he was going to see my buddy that was upstate. That was, that was the person that he, that was the character, it was loosely based, So, Hollywood does its thing. I think of, the movie Heat, back in the day, that's a, classic movie with, all the stars. And I think Jeremy Renner did a Val Kilmer in that, on a lower level, without the star power. But that kind of put him on the map. He was already heading there, but with Affleck putting him there, I mean, he kind of stole the show, Jeremy Renner. And just like Val Kilmer in Heat, I thought you got De Niro, you got Pacino, and then Val Kilmer was just he was the man, But as far as the shootouts go and stuff like that, that's when Hollywood gets a little crazy, because those guys tried it in Cali, I think, years ago, with the bulletproof vests and shit, and that didn't turn out well for them. So
yeah, I just watched Den of Thieves 2, and I saw Den of Thieves 1 years ago, and I just rewatched it, and we were just talking about how, that doesn't really happen anymore, like the armored car robberies and the bulletproof vests and the tactical things.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not like what it used to be.
Well, and I think that, it's funny because I don't know if it's, what do they say? You can take the neighborhood, or you can take the person out of the neighborhood, but not the neighborhood out of the person. And to this day, it's like, I still gotta, I gotta catch myself and if you, whether it be financial, insecurity, which, everyone deals with from time to time. And, it's like to know that in the past, like when I was younger and like, kind of when there was no responsibilities, there was no, and the consequences hadn't hit yet, I hadn't suffered enough, or I hadn't really faced those consequences, and then realized like, wait a minute, like, what am I doing here? This life's too short and it's way too good out here, but to think to myself, like, I know that it's doable, but that's like, it's like the angel and the devil. It's still there. And it's like, listen, all you got to do, like if I was going to do anything, it'd be like, all right, do it by yourself. But like all that thinking is just crazy talk, because it's like, that's exhausting in it, of itself, for me to like, waste time and energy thinking like that. But, it still happens, it's from time to time. I try to make it an idle thought at this point.
Now, did you grow up in Boston?
I did. So I grew up in a neighborhood called Charlestown. And, anyone that is familiar, if you're not, it's like you think of New York with the boroughs. That's the best way I can describe it, So, Charlestown, it's like, it's a neighborhood of Boston. So when you write a letter from, when I was in Pennsylvania, you'd write Charlestown, Mass, right? But it's so small. It's just, it's too small to be its own city, So it's made up of a bunch of neighborhoods. And this neighborhood in particular was one of the, white Irish Catholic neighborhoods, sort of like, I guess, like a Hell's Kitchen in New York or something. I'm sure you read the Westies when you were away. That was a classic. And, South Boston was also just a bigger version of Charlestown. And it was 1 square mile of, it's a different place. It's something that growing up, my childhood, I wouldn't change it for the world. But it certainly was a lot of misinformation, a lot of, there was, it's something to be said about even, there was good morals, there was good values, there was, the principles that were instilled, good people, loyal, all those things. So all those things, it's like, I feel like we get the good and the bad, from not only it starts in the home and then like even out in the street, there's something to be said, my being around like my peers or like, going down that corner at 15 years old or so and finally, and whatever went on at the house or whatever I was taught in the house, like that didn't matter, anymore. It was just like, all right, what do I got to do here? To earn my stripes or to fit in and be accepted. And at that time, it's like, no one was, it was almost like, all right, who can outdo the other person? Or like, there was no one to elaborate or no one to, the fear was real. The acceptance was real, the judgment, and like I say about cliquey and stuff. And, I think I was talking about it recently and I say, as far as I'm concerned, I think that maybe it's a mentality that can help us and hurt us. It can be like a blessing and a curse. But, I feel like we've suffered enough. I feel like that, if you've been through, it has to be enough, I think, for the individual, for the person to say like, all right, well, there's no more, it's not about like, what you think or what this tells me, when I'm not thinking right or whatever. It's about like what I know inside and like, kind of just like, being the best version of yourself, or at least trying to, to excel or to succeed or just to be a decent human being, on a daily basis and to grow, I know in prison, that's certainly wasn't the story. When I hear guys say that, I cringe, but, I grew up in prison or something. It's like, please don't say that. It's like, come on, man. It's a secondhand embarrassment. So yeah, it stunts you. That's why when I went away at 21, I came home at 30. At best, like I was still like a teenager, with my mentality and stuff. And, I certainly, when I was away, I'd love to sit here and tell you that I was reading, these books to educate myself and all that. But, I was just trying to get through the time like any other person, playing handball and that stuff. And the scary part is that I know to myself, I think to myself, like I can get comfortable in those situations. I can get comfortable in an environment like that where there's no priorities, there's no responsibilities. Because like I say, like, this saying is, I'm big with the sayings, with the mantras and stuff. And it's like, I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid to live, and, doing things like this is like, it may be foreign, but at the same time, it like, I know I feel, you know what, today I try to just embrace like the good, the positive vibes and stuff like that, you know, meet new people and kind of, and step outside the box, because where I'm from, like I said, it's very isolated, and you can get stuck in a neighborhood like that, you know, but a lot of pride, a lot of false pride, you know, sometimes too, you know, but yeah, just trying to do the next right thing, you know, and be a better person, you know, for the people that care about me or need me, or like, and that's I think to myself, I'm like, you know, for someone to need me, it's like, as crazy as it may sound to me, it's a reality. So it's like, you know, the memo that I never got or never really paid attention to was like, never picked up on, and that I've realized over the years, or, you know, going through the shit I have, is that in order to be the loyal person, the loving person, in order to be a good dad, in order to be a good husband, and, you know, a good son, a good brother, a good friend, I need to, if I really want to, you know, if I pride myself on those things, and those things mean something to me, which they do, and I try to, you know, I've always tried to carry myself in that way. But the truth is, I have to take care of myself. I have to learn how to be okay with me in order to be able to give that to you, to you know, for the people that want and need it. And then in turn, I can, you know, we can reciprocate that, you know, so.
What did your parents do for work?
So my mom, my father was a firefighter, Boston firefighter. And, you know, it's fun, you know, the generations, they've been married over 50 years, you know. I don't know how they've done it, you know, honestly. There's something to be said about that generation, you know. You know, even the commitment there, it's like no matter what, you know, and things have changed, certainly, with the relationship aspect of, you know, today, nowadays, you know, it's you see a high divorce rate, or, you know, a lot of different things. But anyway, they've been married over 50 years. My father was a Boston firefighter, and my mother held down the fort at home. You know, she worked part-time. And, you know, like I say, you know, you've heard the term knock around people, right? You know, there was no criminal element and stuff, although like there was, even, you know, my family, my extended family, come from a big hockey family. My mom's maiden name is Kachuk. And so my cousin Keith played for a long time. Now his two sons play, Matthew and Brady. You know, if they're on your team, you love them, you know, like a Marshawn, but if not, then, you know, but they're, you know, so hockey was a big thing in my family. That's what I aspired to be. You know, they say, like, I went from sports to courts. My buddy says that. And, yeah, my mom held down the fort at home. My father was working. He provided, you know, in the movie, like A Bronx Tale, you know, the working man's a sucker, one of those deals. It's funny because, like, as silly as it is, and we can sit here and make light of it, but, like, the fact of the matter is, like, there's people that think like that. I did think like that at one point, you know, and I never gave my father the proper, you know, the respect, or, like, even looked up to, like, that's an honorable thing. He fought in Vietnam, you know, and, you know, he came home, he provided, he raised 3 kids, you know, and I think we turned out all right. You know, I got 2 older sisters. You know, they're good kids. And believe me, in a neighborhood like that, like, if there was something to be said, I've been around for 46 years, it would be said, you know, whether malicious or not. And, you know, so they've kind of set you know, I was the golden child. I was the boy. I was the baby. And I got treated as such, and I probably ate it up. I'm sure I did, you know, and, but at the same time, the consequences, I had to find those on my own, you know, because, I kind of ran amok, you know, and, I think when it got to me, you know, my 2 older sisters, once it got to me, my parents were just like, whatever, you know. So they tried their best. And the one thing I say is that they showed me, to this day, like I say, we get the good and the bad. And, you know, sometimes we tend to, as human beings, you know, like, fall into that victim, you know, mentality and think of just the bad and, like, you know, woe is me. And it's like, you know, I try to check myself, and, like, even if I have to say it out loud and get vulnerable and, like, say it in front of, you know, and just shout it out, where it's like the bad, but you can't forget there's a flip side to that, you know, there's good also. So in that way, I try to look at the perspective, you know, it's like the glass half full type deal, you know, and that's something I can control. A lot of things I can't, but, you know, the acceptance thing has been big with me over the years. And even, you know, even doing time, like, you know, it's like we talked about the diesel therapy, right? And, talk about PTSD. It's like, all right, so if you're not a sociopath, right, you're not a psychopath, it'd be nice to be able to check out and not live in reality and not fail, right? But at the end of the day, like, and as I sit across from you, like, where I'm a human being, you're a human being. I'm going to fail every second of it, and I'm sure you did too. And that's the reality of it. When those cell doors crack, I can't just disassociate, Certainly not without like a drink or a drug in my system,
Something that most people never experience, in their life. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just surreal just to think about it,
It is. And it's cool. I think that it's something that, I don't glorify it. I sit here and I'll tell you, like, I'll be the last person, I do it. And if I hear someone I love a good war story. I love a good story to shoot the shit, and like to laugh and like, and talk about different things and just wild stories or whatnot. But as far as glorifying like nonsense and like shit like that, it's like, there's nothing cool about it. That's not a flex. You know what I mean? It's like, that's one thing I've learned. And even being in the feds, and I am grateful that I went there rather than upstate, because as you know, like, and I'm sure you can attest, like, the clientele is far different. Something to be said. I mean, you got, for what it's worth, like you'd have the Unabomber, you'd have like these high profile, these people that are like, even the ones that are like terrible people, right? They're still like, there's something, they're on a different level as far as like their intelligence and stuff, or, maybe what they were trying to do or whatever they believed in and stuff, as opposed to, just your everyday run of the mill, doing petty crime and stuff like that. So, I met some, a lot of good people. I met some, and they taught you the one thing I learned there, and, it certainly came from the home, but, they kind of molded me. It kind of helped me out too. I had two older guys, two OGs from Boston that, kind of had the keys to the yard there. And they just, they took me out of their wing, thank God. And, like I say all the time, for what it's worth, and, Boston has a great reputation, Massachusetts in general. You're from New England and, you're not a rat or a rapist or a pedophile, then you'll be all right no matter where you go. You know what I mean? So the diesel therapy, like you talked about, that was, I think to myself, when I look back in those 111 months, like, before I got to the feds, went to the MDC Brooklyn where they got, they got Diddy now and shit like that, right? I laugh and I'm like, and then flew Con Air to
Con Air. I was on Con Air.
That was an experience,
Oklahoma
City. Right? Oh my God.
Crazy.
I remember, yeah, that was wild. And that's the surreal part when I think about it, because like that shit happened, and I don't know if I was numb to it or whatever. I was just like, I was a kid, and I wasn't like overwhelmed with like wow, like what is this? Because like I was on a mission to like get exactly there, and I got what I asked for when I look back in hindsight, because I just didn't give a fuck, and and I look, and thank God, like I feel like I was, people talk about being saved and stuff, and and I check my ego with that at the door, because it's like when I went away in 2000, I was the first one to go away for the Oxycontin. And, like I say, that's not a flex, it's a fact. It's just part of my story. And like, when I did, I believe, I heard horror stories from that point on. And I don't, no one knew what they were really getting themselves into. And I came home I could never imagine what I was going to come home to, even with all the horror stories. The worst part was hearing about like, like I said, I got two older sisters. So hearing about like the girls I grew up with, I got to, raised to be like a gentleman, you know what I mean? Like, I'd be a caveman like any other guy, but I mean, just to treat women with respect, and like, so I got a soft spot with that. And I know that there was a lot of, shit that I just, there's a lot of deviance, there's a lot of people out there. And that's one thing, it's to have to live in that environment with those types of people. It's just sickening, it's disgusting. And going away when I did in 2000, I think it masked some things, some underlying issues like alcoholism and, addictive personality and whatnot. Because anything, like I used, like an adrenaline junkie, it's like, like Point Break, you know, that was a big movie, you know, growing up in my neighborhood, you know. You'd watch Point Break, you'd watch Heat, you know what I mean? All those things that like a small neighborhood and a tight community. And then with that, you know, the criminal element, it was like you went out and reenacted that and like as if life was a movie, you know. And it's, in reality, it wasn't a thing until, you know, and then when you get there and have to sit with yourself, the worst part of the bid, when I look back, it was the beginning and the end, right? And it's a different type of feeling. The beginning is like maybe fear of the unknown or just like, fuck, you know, looking ahead. But once you get into a routine, you know, and you have that little, you know, that bit of structure, which I never had out here. And like, that's huge, the foundation, just to, you know, try to plant my feet in like where I'm at and just like be content with, you know, where I'm trying to go. I was always like, I remember they cloned that sheep Dolly back in the day when that happened. I'm from the, you know, grew up in the late 90s and I that was me. I wanted to be everywhere at once and I felt like I was missing out on something. And in turn, what ended up happening is I missed out on, you know, quite a bit more just because, you know, that was I couldn't sit still, you know what I mean? I wanted to be everywhere at once and like I thought I was that important and like, you know, they showed me exactly how important I was, you know.
Did you guys struggle financially growing up?
Yeah, so I say this, you know, growing up in my neighborhood, it was, I didn't learn this till later on, but like, you know, there's big comparisons, right? It's almost like, all right, well, and it's like maybe it makes people feel better as far as like, you know, feeling better about their own situation, or you know, or we can do it on the flip side, you know, feeling worse or whatnot, however you want to play it. But when I looked in comparison to like my friends, I had two parents. Most of my friends had, you know, came from like single family. Most just had a mom or whatever that would work or whatnot. There was a lot of, you know, there was no guidance. There was, you know, whether their dads were murdered, whether their dads, you know, were in prison. There was, you know, that was a big part of it. And it's weird because I think of like that, you know, when I talk about the misinformation and like just growing up in that tight knit neighborhood, which had all of the, you know, so many perks and like it's such a, you know, beautiful, like up, you know, when I think back, it was excellent. It was awesome. Like I couldn't have asked for a better childhood, but at the same time, it was chaotic. It was wild. It was dysfunctional. And you know, we get addicted to that, right? It's like, you know, so now to be able to sit still or like what's normal, like, or what's like peace, like what is that? Like I need more and I need more of excitement. I need more like, chaotic things going on. And so with that being said, like I looked around and I thought I was doing all right. You know, I certainly was doing better than most of my friends. You know, I had the two parents. I even think of, you know, you talk about shame and guilt and like these things that we don't identify as kids or whatnot, you know, because who wants to feel those types of way? And that I was almost ashamed that I had I felt I was embarrassed. I didn't want to show up any of my friends, right? I didn't, you know, that my parents had moved in, you know, from the projects to the housing development to a house, right? And most of my friends are in the projects or that housing development. And I couldn't wait to like, you know, I wanted to be, you know, these were my friends, you know what I mean? I wanted to let them know I'm with you. You know, this wasn't spoken out loud, but like through actions, like that's like, you know, basically what was being said. And if they could have spoke, I'm sure they would have said like, bro, I wish I was in a house, you know, I wish I had like some type of normalcy. I wish I had, you know, two parents that, you know, that are doing their best to provide for you and stuff. So, you know, that's basically how I grew up, you know, and you said about like the dysfunction or, you know, poverty stricken or whatnot. I never needed for anything. I'm sure I wanted, but, you know, my mother should thank God for her. You know, I say like, if it wasn't for her, we'd be in trouble, but she's good. She's very, you know, she's good with her money. You know, she's the brains of the operation, you know, but in, the good and the bad. Yeah. Called her Mommy Dearest growing up. If anyone remembers that movie, and she ate it up, you know, she loved that title. So she ran with the gold, you know, with the iron fist, like the Gestapo. She's you know, we're Russian and Irish, which is a crazy mix. So there was, a lot of yelling, a lot of, you know, just strict as far as like, you were gonna fall in line based on like, you know, I laugh. We laugh about it now because, like I said, it wasn't malicious. It wasn't spiteful. But you know, even at the holidays, you know, we'll say like, Mom, I would have rather if you hit me, like, you know, like all those times you snapped the belt, you know what I mean? And like, I still hear that shit in my head. It's like, listen, if you're going to hit me, you know what I mean? Don't pretend you're going to do something if you're not going to do it. You know what I mean? That's just like mental. I'd rather the physical pain, you know, or at least I can feel that as opposed to like, not know when it's coming. Cause now you're like, you grow up and you're like, you know, and you're always on your toes. You're always like, you can't really get comfortable, but at the same time, I think it, you know, provides like, you know, a thick skin, like, you know, and you know, we kind of get through like some things that maybe a lot of people couldn't, you know, that and maybe their stuff looks good on the outside, but you know, there's no one, it doesn't discriminate, you know, and I think to the saying like what goes on in this house stays in this house, and you know, I have this thing where I'm like, that's a great saying, and but to hear that as a kid, like that was like period. It's like, wait, no, there's a lot more that goes on to that. Like, you know, maybe elaborate on it. Maybe let me know, like, what does that mean? Because now when you told me that, I didn't need to go down the corner to learn how to keep my mouth shut. To like, you know, I learned that in the sandbox. You know what I mean? Like, you don't tattle on people. You know what I mean? My mother would give me a backhand, you know, so that stuff there is like, you know, I look back, I would try to do that with my kids now, just elaborate a little bit with these old cliches, these old sayings that like, yeah, it comes from, it makes sense, but maybe the person needs to, you know, maybe you need to elaborate a little more and let them know like where you're coming from, you know, so they can better understand it. And maybe if they're going to receive it and take it and run with it, then they will. If not, then at least you tried, you know. Did
you have a plan for the rest of your life as a kid? Like, did you have a career in mind? What do you want to do?
No, I didn't. And, you know, that's like, you know, I think to myself, I'm 46 years old, and that's something that even you asking that question, I kind of like, you know, tensed up a little bit where it's like, you know, I try not to regret, but as like a human being, like, of course, there's things that I wish I had done different and stuff. But I try not to live in the past and like, you know, and you know, wallow in pity or whatnot. That doesn't get you anywhere, that's for sure. But when I was a kid, I guess I had the fantasies, you know, they were probably, you know, I don't want to say like, you know, my expectations of you know, I wanted to be like my cousin. I wanted to play hockey. You know, that was my goal. Like what kid doesn't want to be, you know, do something they love and like get paid for it, right? It's not even about the money. It's like, you know, that's why hockey's like, as far as, you know, it's like hands down. I saw the Thrasher shirt and stuff, you know, the most down to earth, like the most like normal people, and they just get it. And like they're like little kids out there, you know, they're out there still, they do it for the love of the game, really. You know, it's really not about the money, but so I wanted to, you know, like I talk about my dad, you know, he was a firefighter, right? Who doesn't love a firefighter, right? You know, they save fucking kittens in trees, you know what I mean? Even though I'm not a cat person, but yeah, the city cats, they used to, I think they used to, I have bad memories of them. The alley cats, I'd hear them in heat or I'd hear them fighting and stuff, you know, in the summertime. But with the row houses, you know, our backyards, everyone's was probably the size of this room, but and I'd hear them out there. But yeah, a firefighter, I didn't aspire to be those things, you know. And it was about, you know, like I say, once I went down that corner, I say my mother could have been Mother Teresa or my father could have been the Pope, you know, growing up in like that Irish Catholic household, right? Where what goes on in this house stays in this house. And like, you know, the silent treatment, and you know, if we don't talk about it, almost like it didn't happen, I'll sweep it under the rug, and just that shit gets heavier and heavier, and push it down, right? And don't, you know, don't be careful what you tell, you know what I mean? Don't tell them too much, and just always being on guard and living like that. Yeah, my mother could have been Mother Teresa, my father could have been the Pope, and once I went down the corner, in hindsight, I look back, I was going to be whatever I thought you'd accept me as, you know. It wasn't until I started saying those things out loud, and to me, like I'm passionate when I say it. Like I feel like it's more so for myself to hear, right? Because like I can easily fall back into that, the old behaviors, the old mindset, which will lead to the old behaviors, in getting comfortable in uncomfortable situations, right? And just settling for less. And yeah, going down that corner, like I say, I checked all the boxes that I thought that, it was like a resume, right? Like an application, where do I sign? And I signed my life away. I basically, there was, at that point, there was no identity being formed. There was no self-esteem being built, right? And I chose, I ran on fear. I ran on, and I wasn't alone. This was my whole community, right? Or any other kid that was doing that, right? We weren't individuals. We weren't our own person, right? Because we were too nervous to be, too scared to be, or maybe we just didn't know how, right? And that's okay. But no one was going to admit that when they were kids, we didn't even know how to articulate that or to express that, and to communicate it with each other. And we laugh because I don't know, in a neighborhood like that, especially in the city environment, you weren't going down the corner and talking to your friends about your feelings, or what went on in your house, let alone your feelings, and or vice versa. So the conversations were kind of very surface level and very there was no meaning behind them, and with that, it was everyone almost had to play a character that I'm sure they didn't know that they were even playing, but it was based on what I thought that you thought of me, or your expectations of me, that I created in my own head. And that's a recipe for disaster, and what I've learned is to be yourself and when I'm on point, I attract to people. That's one thing, I see you, I saw your stuff, and there's nothing better than someone that I want to learn about. I want to be creative. I want to be artsy. I like to write, right? That's a passion of mine, right? And maybe the kid growing up, that's not how we walk, talk, act, right? Or certainly don't say that out loud. You know what I mean? You might sound silly, or that's corny, and it's there's nothing cornier than what I put myself through. You know what I mean? That's the truth, and it's something that I kind of. It keeps me going, you know what I mean? It really does. It gives me, I'm passionate about I attract to people that are real, that are authentic, that are, and maybe that person don't even feel that way about themselves or think that, but I can let them know that, right? I can let them know, because why tell myself in my head, with that negative thinking, and, if I'm not taking care of myself, or I'm living dishonestly, right? Because it could be the slightest thing, right? What are you going to lose sleep at night, stealing from the government, you know what I mean? I'll be honest with you, right? And I don't need no one coming after me for this, right? But I wouldn't lose sleep over that to this day, corporations and stuff like that. It's just, I don't condone it. I don't, you know what I mean? To each their own, but just be ready when the, ready to face the consequences, or, I don't care what anyone does. It's, if you're willing to take a shot, or if you want to, whatever the thing is, I'm too busy. I can't think of it. I'm so much in here that I don't have time to think about anyone else. But and that's fine when it comes to negative stuff, or stuff that isn't gonna, help me move forward or be there for the people that care about me. But at the same time, I have to, humble myself in order to be able to be present for the people, or to sit here with you and to meet new people, to network, to to do my best to express myself and speak my truth, because I always say I don't think you can fuck up the truth. I don't think that you can stutter, you can get red in the face, right? You can feel all types of way, but if it's your truth, I believe that it's going to resonate out there. People are going to receive it exactly the way it's supposed to be received, right? And you're going to get the most, in turn, you're going to get good feedback, right? You're going to attract the right people to your life, right? As opposed to me just regurgitating or telling you what I think you want to hear, or, kind of, not being your authentic self. So I don't know. I just feel in that regard, it's something that, I love that. I'm big on, it's funny because you talked about, being away, and I think when Johnny Bott and Bean Shooter were on, and how people, people suck, right? They can, right? But people are great too. It's all perspective, and all, there's times I feel like those things we have to go through as well, right? Which may be super uncomfortable, but being in a situation where someone judges you based on the way you look or the way you talk or whatever the case may be. And, you know, that shit, I don't get time for that, where it's like, you know, I'll stick up for, if someone's willing to defend themselves and fight for themselves, and they're like, or someone that's helpless and can't help themselves, right? It's like, we don't, you know, where I'm from, it's like, you know, bullies get bullied, you know what I mean? And for people to label someone and stuff like that, like, that's where it's like, you know, being away in prison, you see it all the time, right? And guys get hung up on it. And I know that's part of their, you know, that's part of this. That's an unhealthy routine where it's like they're around, they're going around every day. It's like they're rat hunting or like pedophile. It's like, bro, like that all, like, as long as, you know, if it affects you or if it's, you know what I mean? Yeah, do your homework, do your research or whatnot. But as far as it consuming me and me like caring what, you know, if I'm not breaking bread with you, like, it doesn't matter, right? If I'm not have a relationship with you or dealing with you, then what am I going to be? Like, am I going to go around and like, you know, and play that role? And because that's, to me, it's like, that's exhausting. You know, I don't want to, I got to learn how to take care of myself. That's just focusing on shit that is, that there's no control over, right? Like, that person has to live with their shit, you know, that we can sit here and look in the mirror. For what it's worth, it's like, that to me is everything, where, you know, I'm not proud that I went to prison, but I'm not ashamed of it, right? What happened, right? And I believe that everything happens for a reason. I do. And you may not understand it at the time, but, you know, just hang on. And like, that's where faith comes in, I believe. And, you know, and then you come out the other side and it's like, all right, so that's why that happened. You know, sometimes it's easy to get caught up in that mindset or whatnot, but yeah.
Why do you think you decided to go down that crime path, even though you came from such a good family and you had good roots? What was that like first decision to enter into that world?
Fear. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Acceptance, right? Every person, right? You know, especially a kid, okay? It's no one's unique, right? It's like we put on this this facade or this like bravado, and you know, we can, even the way to the, you know, even, you know, the way we dress or whatnot, you know, it's like, I can, you know, they say like a dressed up garbage can, right? Like I like fashion. I like dressing up. I like, you know, feeling good. But for a long time, like that only gets that, what I realized for myself, it's like and it's a blessing and a curse in that way, where, you know, who wants to face it? But like, I feel like that's the only opportunity for growth, is like the internal stuff, where someone like me, like pain's a great motivator, right? And, you know, I'm stubborn, hard-headed, and at the end of the day, really, it's consumed with, like, you know, like I say about people, they wake up, they have anxiety, right? They have depression. Well, join the fucking club, right? And I say that in jest, where it's like, you're not alone, you know what I mean? You know, join the club where it's like, yeah, I get it, you know? It's fucking, it can be crippling, it can be debilitating, you know? So I can, you know, I have compassion and empathy towards that. But when I look back, like why I went down that road, that's the answer right there. And you know, it's my answer. And because I could sit here and give you a story and tell you like this, that, the other thing. Like, my parents didn't raise me to go down the path I did, but they talk about product of environment, right? And even with that being said, right, because I remember I held a resentment against the neighborhood, where when I did go away and I was young and I was probably looking to, you know, point the finger in my own head, like to just, you know, to be like, you know, feel like the victim and kind of like pity myself a little bit, because I couldn't handle those emotions and whatnot, and couldn't accept my fate or reality and what I had done, you know, face those consequences. So it had to be someone, you know, some person, place, or thing, something other than me, right? And who wants to look at themselves? And the fact of the matter is, like, that's a lie, you know. And when I was faced with that, it's like, all right, so now what do you want to do? Because you can continue to suffer like that, right? But you know, there's nothing worse. Like, I feel like it's like purgatory on earth, when like you know the truth and you're still, you know, you're defying it, you're denying it, and it's like you have to be okay with yourself. So, and I believe, you know, being from that family that like taught me those morals, values, and principles, that like a community that I grew up in, right? Yeah, we glorified, like, when I went down that corner, if you, like, I joke around, but it's the truth, right? So marijuana is like, it's legal now, right? So growing up, like, PCP, angel dust, right, which has, embalming fluid in it, and we, it was for generations, that was a moneymaker, but also it was a big, it was like smoking marijuana, right? And it's, Charlestown's known for, like, PCP, and when I remember when I was in Wyatt, I found out there was another neighborhood, Bridgeport, maybe like Aaron Hernandez. I know he used to like to smoke the dust, and just numbing yourself, right? I think that's why it was so popular and prevalent, and to this day, it's out of reality. But growing up there, it's like if you were a bank robber and if you smoked angel dust, in any order, one you were cool and two you were cooler, and then at that point, right, like I said, I checked those boxes and right, and it's like, okay, what do I got to do here? How do I get to this position, right? That like, and then I thought I had made it, right? When I had, an older friend tell me, that he heard I was doing big things, or like, oh, you're doing big things. When I had a brand new Lexus truck, and I'm 17, 18 years old, and coming down New York to meet the Connect, and I hold the hold the keys to the neighborhood, like legend in my own mind, right? Just a scared kid, just a kid that like didn't know or wasn't willing to, and was so consumed or like so worried about what I thought that you may have thought, and then what in turn this had told me, or what this was telling me to, initially, as soon as you wake up in the morning, it's like, that's my thing that I figured out, over time, where it's like, I wake up untreated, right? So, you can label it whatever you want, but like at the end of the day, it's what you know about yourself. And, I know that certain things like are not, they just don't go with me. They don't, it's not going to turn out well, and I feel like, there's so much, there's more. And what makes me feel good is, it's the truth, right? And spreading the message, spreading the word that like, and letting people know. And if someone picks up on it, right, like that's awesome. It's a good feeling. And like I say, it's, there's something to be said about it. And to be able to sit here like we are, and to be able to hold your head up, right? It may not mean nothing to most people, but in our situation, right? Like it means everything, right? Your name, right? My family's name, my parents, right? Yeah, those knock around people, right? They're proud of their son, right? Even though, it's like what they instilled in me, like I confirmed it by like not going to prison, right? All right, so yeah, going to prison, not like that was my shit, right? But then they can still be proud of like I came home, and because of that, having that support system, right? And I believe that love trumps all, that unconditional love that like as dysfunctional, chaotic, and like abnormal as like a household may be growing up, what the fuck is normal, And everyone has their own experience. But like, I believe that trumps all. And like, that's why I think I've been able to stay home, for the past 15 years, there's been some close calls, whatnot, but I haven't went back, and I think it's because of that. And so for people to have that support system, or even to Jim Valvano, you've heard of the guy that died of cancer, the Villanova coach. Mm-hmm. He was on ESPN before he died, and I think of this all the time because when he said it, it was so deep, and like he said that he talked about his dad and how his dad used to tell him these simple words. He used to say, "I believe in you," and like I say, growing up in that household, right? I felt, there was love, right? I felt it, right? It was more like, like, come on, what do you, like, stop it. Like, it wasn't mushy, there was no I love yous and stuff like that. And now I say it all the time, right? And that rubs off on people. But that wasn't even those that, communicating like that or expressing like that, where, yeah, my father was providing. My mother was like holding down the fort, and like she had the 3 kids, and life's going on, and here's a young kid, a little boy or whatever, and it's like I never heard those words, right? And that's not a jab to my dad. Like, my dad, he'd have a few drinks and be like, I love you, and I'm like, Dad, listen, my mother would say, what's he telling you? He loves you again. Tell him to say it when he's not having a couple of beers or whatnot. And even to be able to say that, to communicate that and express that to someone. Now, like, I'll say to my kids, like, listen, I believe in you, right? Sometimes I want to, strangle my son or something, you know what I mean? Choke him and just shake him. But everyone has their own journey. Everyone has to, and to be able to say that to someone, sometimes, words are very powerful. So, and actions are even more powerful. But to be able to back that up, it starts with the word, the words, the actions, and then like to be able to say like, to tell someone I believe in you. Like I think of that, like when he said that, it really hit home where it's like we second guess ourselves. Or I'll speak for myself, or doubt ourselves, or those fears and insecurities and that are embedded, and then in turn. Now you're stunted emotionally and mentally because you're making bad decisions and you're putting yourself in harm's way, and like now you're behind the 8 ball, right? And I feel like even with prison, I know that's gonna follow me for the rest of my life, right? Whether it be job opportunities, whatever the case is, right? But I believe that we're resilient, we're survivors, and that goes for anyone, Like I said, right, I'd never tell on no one, and I'm not a fucking weirdo, right? Like I don't like, so I'll be all right. I tell my kids the best thing I tell them. I'm like, listen, I can't promise you success. I can't promise you financial, like all that stuff. But I will tell you this: if you treat people the way that you want to be treated, you'll be okay in life. I believe that firmly, and I learned that in fucking grammar school, just treat people the way you want to be treated. And it's, I think that's the way to go.
Did you end up graduating high school at all?
So I did graduate. I was, believe it or not, I was a honor roll student. Right?
Really? Oh, okay.
Honor roll student, right? Actually, I look like you in high school, dude. Freshman year, I had the glasses, right? I remember walking around. I had my books. Everyone had backpacks. And now I wear contacts, and that's a funny story. You talk about fucking craziness. I was in 6th grade. I went home. This is why my eyes, like if I didn't have my contacts in, I wouldn't be able to function like throughout the day. I'd be like legally blind, probably, I'd say. In 6th grade, I must have thought saw someone on a magazine, or thought someone was cool that had glasses. And I went home and I told my mother, right? Because how do we get, the manipulation and and I went home and I told her, all right, I can't see the blackboard, Ma. And she said, all right. So she makes an appointment for the optometrist, and I go and I fail the test on purpose. So needless to say, I can't see now, right? So I have to wear the contacts, which I sleep with. They're supposed to be taken out. And like a little kid, I still need to be handled like that sometimes, But so it's trial and error. But I made honor roll, and I attribute it to my mother, that being, mommy dearest, I was scared of my mother to this day, right? I still have that fear, right? And, I try to look at it there's probably more for therapy or counseling session where it's that shit's real too, PTSD where it's just being, when someone feels small, I remember being a little kid and being at the top of the stairs, and we don't realize how we affect other people, and it really runs shit rolls downhill, or it's we have a profound effect on people, and it's not a malicious thing, my intent. I feel like I've always had good intent, right? But what's that mean? What's that count for, right? I've also hurt people because I'm not perfect, right? So that's more for when to say that's more for myself, more for my own well, I didn't mean to, or even growing up thinking my middle name was sorry, I always saying sorry, and that doesn't what I've learned, and that doesn't help build self-esteem. It doesn't help build character or anything like that, because you're self-loathing, right? You feel for someone to always say sorry, right? Well, I had to always say sorry because maybe I started off feeling less than whatever, right? And that's something that maybe, whatever the case is, I'm obligated to do something about it, right? Or else I'm going to suffer, right? And I'm going to be that victim, and I'm going to be on the installment plan, right? And that's not for me anymore. But it's certainly there. There's like they say, there's jail cells for sober people. There's jail cells for people that are just living just living their life, and they're not. It doesn't seem like Chicken Little, the sky's falling, everything looks good. There's there's certainly jail cells for them. So I don't want to be in that position, anymore.
Share with us what happened that gave you that long federal prison sentence.
Okay,
Give us the rundown story.
Right. So I like I said, I hit the corner. I went from sports to courts. I played sports growing up. I went to Catholic school. Went to high school. And after I graduated high school, and I went to school. I was either going to go to UMass Amherst, or I ended up I found a school that was like the biggest party school at the time. It was like North Adams State College. That's where my mind was at. I just, and I went there in the first year. It was like, it was turning into like Mass College of Liberal Arts, right? So that was right there. That should have been like a kind of a red flag or something that I picked up on, but I didn't know it was kind of like led to where, I was about to go and stuff. And, I couldn't see it. I certainly couldn't see it. So I ended up around 15. I went down the corner around 15. High school, I was there down the corner. I was with my friends, and there was a lot of fun there. But a lot of chaos, a lot of abnormal, just wild shit. Stuff that we can maybe laugh about, but there's stuff probably that should be either forgotten or really, gotten out and purged of. But I went down that corner, and then, I had, like I say, I had a run from like maybe 15 or 16. And, at this time, now I had to be like, that legend in my own mind. I had to create that character that I didn't know I was creating. So I started out, and, I made my bones, I earned my stripes, and I went above and beyond to like make sure that like you knew that like I was I was one of you, and it got me exactly where it was supposed to get me. And at 21 years old, I had that run from like that was my childhood basically. It wasn't my the good feelings. That was the wild and crazy, and basically where it got me. And at 21 years old, like I said, I was driving to Maine. I had a few friends that played for University of Maine. They had won the national championship, I think, the year before. And one of my friends called me. He said, "Are you holding?" I said, "Absolutely, always." And he said, "All right, well, he said, why don't you come up with? There's a big party tonight." So at the time, I remember I had, my parents. I was like, I thought I was like a big boy now. I thought like I had it all figured out. I was going to get my own apartment. I didn't like the way they, I felt like I'm a man now, like, you don't, I don't need, you know what I mean? Like, show me some respect, And so I remember I was kind of like I was in the car. I'm staying at hotels and just living crazy, right? And thinking I'm trying to think it was fun. And I remember I drove to New Hampshire, and when I drove to I drove to Maine, and I had missed the exit for Maine. I was looking for one specifically for Maine, and I ended up seeing like New Hampshire, Maine, and I realized that I had like went around in a circle. So on impulse, I get annoyed, and I hit the gas, and I ended up, now I'm speeding, and I come under an overpass, and in the dip there's two stadies. They're facing each other like that. And I was probably going 90 or so. I wish, when I look back, I'm like, it's pointless now, but I'm sure I could have at least like got to an exit or whatever. But I think even then, I think it was bigger than me. I think that was like, my higher power, God, that I grew up knowing that he was just like, all right, enough's enough, kid. You know what I mean? Like, you're not stopping. So like, this, I'm going to put an end to this. And I ended up deciding to pull over for whatever reason. And I pulled over. I had like a pharmacy's worth of, I had over 5,000 Oxycontin. And I had a 9mm. I had a gun underneath the seat. And now with that being said, right, where I grew up, it's like, yeah, notorious. And like, it's like, bank robbery and armored trucks and stuff like that. And, that was glorified, and like that happened. That was a real thing, and something that 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 was where it was at. That was like what kids aspire to be, teenage kids, teenage boys, certainly. And when I look back, I got pulled over. We never carried guns around and stuff, unless you were going to do a score, right? That like, or, someone had an individual beef or something, typically, in the, 80s and like early 90s, like, yeah, there was, guys that, there was a lot of murders and stuff like that. And, code of silence and people, even mothers that knew that their child had gotten killed by a certain person, like they just, it was just not talked about, it was handled on the street or whatnot. But for the most part, like, I fought every one of my friends growing up, and, you get closer like that, and that's just boys being boys. And, there was no gun, like people didn't carry guns around where I'm from, like that wasn't, gang bang and all shit like that, that wasn't our story, we didn't need to. But when it was time to get down, that's what, they were very available, and, everyone was ready to go. So I had that gun, and I remember I got pulled out. The guy said, step out of the car, and he, the old inventory search, which they're not supposed to really touch anything, just look around. And, so he ended up opening, he ended up, looking around, and he had me in the back of the cruiser. And at that point, what are you going to do, he asked, can I search the trunk? Absolutely not, come on, you already got me, you know what I mean? You think I'm going to make your job easier? And, but I remember feeling the weight like a gorilla. I felt like a huge weight come off my shoulders. I didn't know what it was at the time, but it was almost as if I could, I exhaled for the first time since I was that kid with, like, there was still some innocence left. There was still some, that 5-6 years of like just madness, was exhausting. And I felt like I, almost held my breath the whole time, just, and when he put those cuffs on something, I was just like, like, I needed to be stopped. And, I look back and, at the time I wasn't throwing up, I wasn't celebrating that, or, I wasn't, I was broken at the time, I was a kid. I was scared. I was, more than anything, I was just hurt, I was just like a shell of a person. And, my family, like I said, they showed up, they supported me, whatnot. They've always been there for me. I was 21 years old, and they sentenced me, with the feds, they go by the guidelines, so hire a lawyer for $50,000, and they plead out like, you just took $50,000 from me, and fucking to plead out for the lower end of the guidelines. Like, I'll represent myself next time, right?
How did it become a federal case from the state troopers arresting? What transpired? So
924C means use and carry a firearm in relation to a drug trafficking crime, right? I'm no law expert, but I know this from my case. And what they're saying is that you were using and carrying the gun to protect the drugs, okay? Which wasn't the case. But that's how they get you. So now they get me for crossing state lines. That's federal, okay? While at the same time, they had started in 2000, right before I went away, I was, like I said, I kind of put a little resume together, and, I had the feds show up at my house, and with my parents there, and that was kind of a funny story. That's one of the stories I told Affleck, that he got a kick out of, and, played good cop, bad cop, and just trying to let me know, like that's what they were doing, but they were, they were trying to pump for information, but it was like, you got the wrong person, you know what I mean?
This is because you were selling Oxy?
We were robbing, at that point I had stepped out. I had started, the banks, and then realizing that the banks, there's no money in banks, right? If you're gonna make it, if you're gonna make it worth it, right? Like you're gonna make that move, or you're gonna step out, then like the armored trucks is the way to go, right? And that's just.
But you never went to prison for robbing banks.
No,
okay.
Right. So in statute of limitations too, that's a good thing. But yeah, I remember, so they were investigating for that. So the feds were investigating for that. One of the kids I was running with, my running partner at the time, he's doing life now. And I had no business being, but I was, like I said, I was a follower. I got in where I thought I could fit in, and I would have ran, like I say, I'm the asshole, like, and I say this for my own self, and like to to humble myself where like, you know, that loyalty, like loyal to a fault where like I'll end up catching a life bid as your co-defendant because like, you know, because you're my friend or I grew up with you or like you're from the neighborhood and like you're a good dude, you're solid, right? Maybe you might be out of your fucking mind, right? And or that sociopath or psychopath or like, you know, untreated, like, you know, off your meds, whatever the case may be. And next thing you know, I'm an accessory to murder or whatever, you know, whatever it is. And now I'm doing life in prison because I put myself in a bad position around, you know, someone that doesn't matter. Like, it's not a moral thing, right? They may be I may think very highly of them, you know, but, so I ended up, they were investigating, you know, the feds, they had investigated that, you know, this bank robbery task force.
So they were already on your tail when the Stadies pulled you over.
Yes.
Okay.
So they must have got the call and they were like, you know, okay, you know, they must have.
That makes sense. How much was those drugs worth? Like dollar value, retail?
So the score altogether, and I know this from my paperwork and stuff, and, you know, just being bored and in there, you know, when you're fighting your case, there's, you know, one of the kids, my friend from South Boston, that he was hanging out with me that day because a couple of days prior, you know, like I said about the pharmacies, like, you know, people, when I went away, people, like, I heard horror stories of people, like, they were going in with butter knives. Like, I wasn't addicted to these pills, right? We were getting them, and I was flipping them right away, you know? And my two buddies that we started doing it, and then it was monkey see, monkey do. But my two buddies, they both passed away, you know, and they were two younger kids. These kids had balls. Their balls were, these kids had so much heart, but like, and I wish that, like, you know, I wish that they could have another chance to just, like, you know, put that heart, like, where it's, you know, and I talk about the code or, like, you know, there's something to be said about, like, yeah, we may fuck up our lives or put ourselves in positions where we end up in prison. But, like, I feel like when we do something, we go all in, right? And when we take an oath, we you know, we honor a code, right? Like I said, it doesn't have to mean anything to anyone else, but, like, from where I'm from and, like, you know, where we grew up, like, and where you've been, like, that counts for everything. You know what I mean? So God forbid if things ever, you know, if you ever have to end up in that environment or whatnot, it's nice to know, like, you know, it's, you know, you can survive anything. And what I try to survive now is life, you know, on a daily basis. But they had the bank robbery task force. Then they had started an Oxycontin task force. And Margaret Cronin was her name. Yeah, and you know, it's all in the paperwork, but the total value for that score was like close to like $1 million. Wow. Now that's between 4 people, you know what I mean, and like street value, obviously, you know what I mean. It'd take less, but
that's,
you know,
the catchy headlines. I got to do that, you know.
Yeah, and but like I said, you know, I look back and, you know, my friend from South Boston, he was just hanging out with me one day, and my buddy who passed away, he said, Joe, we gotta do that score. And these kids, the Wild, they now, I'm the older kid to them, right? I'm a few years older. And they these kids didn't give a fuck, right? They'd hop the counters and at banks, and like they were they'd watch the movie Heat. They get all amped up, right? And here I am, right? I'm like, all right, so the younger kids, they're asking me, so I can't say no, right? And I'm like, fuck, I really don't want to, you know. The shit that runs through your head too, it's like, yeah, it's the ultimate high, but it's like, why, like crazy shit, like, you know, silly stuff, like it's almost, it's comical, but that rush is like so intense. You know, I remember I talk about this, you know, one of my first, the bank robbery was, I remember I had like a Dirty Harry, it was like a 45, right? And I'm like this, you know, skinny, like 17-year-old kid, and I got a painter's outfit on, and like that wouldn't stick out, right? And I'm suited up like from head to toe, and it's a Friday morning because, like, you know, we watch movies, right? We do our homework. We learn from the older guys in the neighborhood, right? And that's, you know, we that's Bible as far as we're concerned at that age. And I remember going in, and I was supposed to hold the floor, which holds the floor. So my buddy helps the counter, and I'm holding the floor, and it's a Friday morning. Now people are cashing their checks, right? We're in a Spanish neighborhood, right? Because we don't do it in our neighborhood, right? You don't shit where you eat. And I I remember I had like a 45 and this thing was huge. It was like, I must have looked so ridiculous, but there was a couple Spanish girls and they were huddled up together, you know. And I look back and like talk about being raised with that family where like, that's not like doing this. Yes, I did these things, but like, that's not how I was raised to be. And I remember, now we're in there and like 10 seconds probably feels like a minute feels like an hour, right? And I'm like, all right, you know, I'm trying to be patient. The guy comes in and I like, all right, you know, put him on the floor and like, and I always tell people, it's like, you know, in Pulp Fiction, you know, everybody be cool. It's a robbery. You know what I mean? You know, I can't come up with nothing original at that point, you know, maybe now I could, but, and I remember maybe I got spooked or I was paranoid, you know, like I got a little, I kind of, you know, because you want to be calm. Like I never did a robbery I never was under the influence, you know, that's one thing. And, but that just fed into the ego where it's like, I label myself these things, like first a drug dealer, a stick up kid. Like I'm that guy. And like, the fact of the matter was like, you know, no, I'm the guy that will do these things to like, let you know that, and I remember I pointed the gun at a woman, you know, a middle-aged woman. And to this day, like, and it's not something I'm proud of. It's, you know, it's not funny. It's fucking, actually, it probably haunts me a little, you know, but I remember I saw the look in her eyes and it was like a deer in the headlights. And I remember lowering it, right? I'm not in there trying to hurt anyone, right? I just want what I want when I want it. And like, you know, and I remember lowering it and I was like, you know, I'm sorry, you know what I mean? I'm not here. Now here I am explaining like I'm robbing this bank, right? And these people are probably like, you know, I don't know what happened to that woman. I don't know if she had a heart attack. I don't know, you know. Those are the things that like, you know, I tell that story because like it happened, right? Where, and to know like, it's like that, I look back at that and just the thinking and like that, like what I was willing to do and who I was willing to put in harm's way and, you know, not thinking about anything but what I needed and what I wanted. And that's not how I was raised, like I say, you know. To this, you know, I don't condone that shit. That, you know, I would be completely against. I'd be the first person. I'd walk an old lady across the street with her groceries. You know, that's how we were brought up, and I'm sure you would do the same thing. But when it came down to that stuff, it was like, you know, just almost as if you should have known when I walked in that, like, you know, all right, we're here to collect, and like this is, you know, this is our tribute.
How did your parents react to your arrest when they found out? What was that first conversation with them like?
You know what? I remember they came to the state police barracks, and you know, I talk about shame. I remember I was just like, I had my head down. I couldn't even look at them in the eye, you know, and I had the shackles and the cuffs, and they were sad. They were just devastated. You know, my mother had told me later when she'd come, they'd come once a year. Once I went to Allenwood to Pennsylvania, and she would come and she, you know, I remember her saying like she could sleep finally when I was away, you know, the stuff that we put our families through. And, you know, that felt good. You know, it's like, the last thing you want to do is hurt a loved one or hurt anyone, for that matter. But it was like that selfish, like, you know, that immature, selfish attitude. And, even when I got sentenced, I remember thinking, I had already taken the plea for 111 months and, you know, in my head, because I couldn't wrap my head around that. I'm 21 years old, and I remember being in the tank, in the cage, and they brought me down right before I went up to get sentenced. Here I am thinking in my head, like, you know, pacing back and forth. I'm like, you know, they're going to see my family. They're going to look at me and be like, look at this. He's not that bad. You know what I mean? They're going to know who Joe is at his core. You know what I mean? They're going to see through, and they're going to see that, like, this kid don't deserve this, right? Well, that's not the way it works. My judge was the space shuttle that blew up when I was a kid. Krista McCullough, she was from New Hampshire, I want to say. She was a school teacher, and her husband, Judge McCullough, he was my federal judge. And I got sent inside New Hampshire, and they ended up, and then I ended up going after like a year and a half, almost 2 years. I stayed in New Hampshire in like a county jail, which was, so I kind of ran amok there. I was young and wild, and, and I had the energy to be able to do that stuff, send some money home to my dad for the cigarettes and stuff, like I said, I was still playing that role and still like, along the way. And I guess I needed it to like, survive at that point. And then when I went to the feds, like I said, my two older guys, Stevie L and Richie G, they just took me under their wing, and they showed me, I grew up with them as far as like, they taught me about respect and like, more so how to respect, yourself, and in turn be able to show like true, genuine respect for another person. You know what I mean? Because they had been there. They weren't, I wasn't a crash dummy. They weren't, gassing me up or like, putting batteries in my back to like, they cared, they're good people, and they had seen enough, and they had been through enough, and they were still going through it. And they saw a young kid come in that, certainly didn't have a clue. And, when I needed to be, they needed to fuck with me, you know what I mean? They certainly let me hear it. They needed to like humble me or whatever, or let me know like my place. Then they did that, which I'm grateful for. And when I needed to be uplifted or needed to be like called a little, as that, like I said, that kid, that the baby boy, of the house, that mama's boy, like they did that as well. So, I look back and I'm, for those guys, like I'm forever grateful. You know what I mean? Those are my friends. Like, and I believe a friend is someone that you don't have to see. The best way I can say it is like, I don't have to see, me and you are friends. I don't have to see you for X amount of time. When we see each other, we pick up where we left off. There'll never be that, when you got the person that says, oh, where you been? Or like, oh, when they make you feel a type of way, it's like, bro, I'm living my life, right? You're living your life, right? There's no love lost, right? And everyone's just doing the best they can. And you pick up where you left off. And it's very rare to find those types of relationships, but, I cherish them. So as far as like I got the 111 months. You had asked what my parents thought. They were sad. They were devastated. And I think they were relieved, to be honest with you.
Is Richie in Boston? Is he from Boston area?
You know Richie.
Yeah, I do. I met him at Revere, right?
Yeah, Captain Morgan, yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to get him on the show.
I know.
He wears glasses, right?
Yes, Richie's the best.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know he was there with you, too. Yeah,
yes.
I think he's leaning towards doing it. He's seen me film a couple episodes. Old school guy.
No, that's the cat right there. That's the guy right there. And, if Stevie could come on with them two are like, the odd couple, right? But they're like, they're so much alike. They're so different. And like I said, there were times and they would switch, they talk about good cop, bad cop. Well, it's like good con, fucking, or tough love. And like, then like, some affection where they would play that, right? If Stevie was bullshit at me, right? Because I'm a kid, I'm making mistakes, right? I'm doing things that maybe, I don't see like a few moves ahead, like they see, like, what could happen, how to act, how to carry myself, how to, basically just fall in line and like, kind of almost be invisible, but like also have a voice like when need be. And, knowing that you don't want to stick out in an environment like that, you just kind of want to keep your head down, but, let people know, like, that's not for, that doesn't mean anything about being soft or anything like that. It's like that's what they taught me. So right there, Richie, I told him the last time I talked to him, I'm like, Rich, you gotta, he helps a lot of people. He's very selfless and his story is amazing. And I told him, I said, you can help a lot of people, even more so than you already do. And I think you'd be the perfect person that could, present him to an audience or whatnot, with the platform that you have. I think, that's a no-brainer.
Definitely.
He's the best, and he's friends with Johnny Bart. And,
yeah, great guys.
Yeah, it's a rare breed. It's few and far between, but you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way.
So share with us some prison war stories. I'm sure you got some good ones from that many years in there.
So prison war stories. So I got the one that sticks out, the one that comes to mind is I had a beef with like I said, 111 months, you know, I don't like confrontation. I don't look for fights or whatnot, but if you will be tested, you know what I mean? Whether intentionally or just like spontaneously, you know, there's a lot of hormones, a lot of egos and hormones, like, you know, bouncing around in there, and it's very heavy, as you know. And I had a fight with I had a beef with a kid from DC. He was a black kid. You know, in Boston, when I say that, like, where I grew up, like, it was white Irish Catholic, right? With that being said, like, I'm a city boy, right? I'm a city kid. If you're from the city, right, like, even though I grew up in that environment, right, when I was on the bus and it was like, you know, me and a Canadian kid, like, who's a different type of, you know, he didn't grow up like I did, like, but he may have the same complexion. And, you know, I was the only white kid on the bus. For what it's worth, I was more like wondering, oh, what's it going to be like, this and that. But as far as like another person, like, you know, being worried or nervous about another person based on their complexion or something like that, that wasn't, it wasn't the case. That, you know, we had our own story, you know, we had made our own, you know, our own noise. And I had a fight with a kid from DC, and we were playing flag football. Right, so they have on Sundays, right? It's like, you know, around Thanksgiving or something like that. You know, we get out of the blocks, and at this time, you know, they had switched it up. So the Boston guys used to have their own team, you know, 038, and then we would play with like the New York guys, right? The New York guys, the Philly guys, and they started it so you could only play with your unit, right? So there's 4 units in Allenwood at the time, and Stevie's our quarterback. Richie plays. Richie's like the tight end or something. I'm the other tight end. And I remember Stevie, you know, Stevie was the quarterback. He was like Johnny Utah in fucking Point Break. And, or from the other one, I can't think of the name, but it's a funny movie, with the I think, Keanu Reeves or something. So I remember playing, it was a Sunday, and we're up in the yard. And I remember they were playing the politics that goes on there, right? So I'm like the only one. There's a couple of us, right? But it was like Stevie's the quarterback, right? And he's running the show. And I'm on the sidelines, right? And, you know, I'm kind of, you know, quiet for the most part. You know what I mean? I know, you know, and just kind of taking everything in. And I'm 20, probably at the time, probably like 24, 25. I'm in my prime, at least I think I am, right? And there was an older dude, Buck, from the Bronx, right? And he was washed up, right? This black dude, Buck, and he was like, and he was playing, he wouldn't come out of the game. So now, like, I'm like getting my feelings. I'm like, bro, this is fucking bullshit. I'm out of here, right? So I leave, right? I don't say nothing to no one, right? I'm like pouting, and I'm walking away, and I go to grab my net bag, and there's about 5 or 6 dudes from DC, right? And they're on the bleachers, and there's a kid that just hit the compound, a tall kid, right? A young kid. And he was sitting on my net bag, and I'm like, excuse me. And he didn't move, right? So now I'm already annoyed that they're not, right? So I'm like, excuse me, and I pulled it, and I ripped it out. So now he looks at me, right? And when he looked at me, I'm like, what's up, bro? And he's like, now when I say that, right, now I'm not thinking, right? I'm thinking about how they just fucking were playing politics. They wouldn't let, you know, they're playing this dude over me. And, you know, and when I pulled it out, I said, what's, you know, he looked at me like I had 10 heads. I said, what's up? And he said, he got up in front of all these dudes. I had been at this compound now for like 4 or 5 years. I had seen these, you know, these dudes on the weight pile and stuff, right? You know, we don't sit down and eat together, but like, they know me, I know them. They know, you know, Richie and Stevie, you know what I mean? It's like a mutual respect, you know, more or less. And, you know, you do your thing, we do our thing. And these dudes that I'd been on the weight pile with, that I had seen for the past 4 or 5 years, that, you know, walk by and high and by, you know, at that point when I was by myself and they showed their true colors, and the kid got up and like put on a show, and he was trying to put on a show, and he got up and he stood up and he started taking his jacket off, right? Which is a bad move. So here I am now, right there, the butterflies, the adrenaline kicks in, right? Like I said, I don't like confrontation. I don't want it, right? So I'm trying to think quick, but it's not quick enough because I don't want to go to the hole, right? I'm trying to do my time, like, you know, smoothly. But at the same time, like now you got me, it's fight or flight, and I'm not flying anywhere, right? Like something like this, we're gonna have a standoff here, right? And so I'm thinking, I'm like, all right. So the kid says now he thinks he starts taking his coat off. He says, yeah, what's up with fuck all this what's up shit, blah blah blah. And I said, bro, I don't know what this all is. I came over to get my bag, and you looked at me like I had 10 heads. And right before that, I had looked at all the dudes that I had known, almost like a last ditch effort to be like, bro, talk to your boy. You know what I mean? Like control him, right? And when I looked at them, right, they showed their true colors, and they all went like, you're on your own. You know what I mean? And they could have stepped up and been like, bro, leave it alone. They didn't, right? So they wanted to see something, right? So they got what they wanted, I guess. And the kid says, yeah, next time, he must have thought I was copping out. He must have thought I was like copping a plea when I was like, explaining. What I was trying to do was just like, I was trying to just diffuse the situation, and when I said that, the ignorance, he just said like, well, next time keep walking. So at that point, it was just like, all right. So then I attacked him, right? So now all these years, right, I had like a couple beats before, but like I said, that wasn't, I tried, I would like to, try to avoid them, but when they're there, and, sometimes they're unavoidable. And I took so much aggression out on this fucking poor kid. I remember I had his dreadlocks. I was turning them. They were like pulling out, like I was pulling out chunks of his hair. And, the hillbillies in Pennsylvania, there was like, the COs, the screws had like 2 teeth, one for soup, one for steak, and they're like, they're racist, these motherfuckers, right? Like they say Boston's racist. It's like, no, dude, we don't like ignorance. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter if you're white, black, fucking Spanish, or you know what I mean? And so that we get, stereotypically, we get like a bad rap for that. You know what I mean? I met so many, like, if you're, real recognizes real. Like, that's one thing that I am glad about, being away and like learning about different cultures. Like, it's something that I didn't grow up around, right? And that was fine. But like to experience that and know like, not that I didn't know it before, but I had never been, that's something I wasn't accustomed to. So to meet people that like, just good people from different races, different nationalities, different cultures, to learn about their, their little mixes with the food and stuff like that, that's something that, that I am grateful for, I look back and stuff.
Who do you run with, the New England car?
Yes, Boston, yeah. 038, yeah, all day.
Is that small in Allenwood? Because I feel like there's more of them in, like Massachusetts, Devons, Fort Dix. Yeah, well, we had a good size. I mean, it was probably smaller than most places, but like now Allenwood's like, they're spread out. Now it's a huge compound, right? You have the pen, you have the medium, you have the low, and where were you? The medium, I went from the medium to the low when I was in, and because it goes by point system. So now this was my first time in prison. So I'm not going to go straight to a penitentiary unless it was warranted, right? So I was going away for drugs and a gun, They gave me 10 years. They smoked me and they made an example out of me. Like I said, I think that I was the first one to go away, and when they probably got that call, they were like, all right, they didn't get me for other stuff, but they knew exactly what was going on, and so they made up for it in the end, I never could have imagined. I didn't know. I was ignorant to it, and to the law, where I thought that if I was to get caught with a gun that I had no business even having, but I didn't need it that time, at that point, right? Once in a while, and that I'd get like a year and a day in the county or something, and so those were consequences I thought that I could handle. I was willing to face, but little did I know they hit me with the 5, use and carry. So now you're getting 5 for a gun. And I couldn't even fathom it. And then 5 for the drugs. So, so at that point, like I said, I made the big time, and it wasn't all it was cracked up. It was, all it was cracked up to be, but it's certainly something that I look back and, I'll never get that time back. I know when I came home, I try to maybe make up for lost time for a little bit. I realized that that's not an option, and that's not reality. I'll never get that time back. And now what do I want to do from that point? That's a shitty feeling to think, but at the same time, it served me no purpose, or there's nothing good that's come out of me,
being resentful or holding, or feeling like I'm entitled or that, if you have been through what I've been through, I put myself in that position, I cost myself that time, and I wasn't the only one that suffered. Really, my family probably suffered worse than me, they were out here living life, they were dealing with life on life's terms, and, I was in there just, just wasting time,
Was it a struggle to readjust because you missed like some pivotal years, 20s to 30?
Absolutely.
So was it a struggle to, readjust socially back into society?
Socially, I would say maybe like some, anxiety had, that had kicked in. But I always, as far as like being personable and stuff like that, and like I said, it was either, here's the thing, when I had come home, right, I'm on this, the people, I'd run into people, and now this person hasn't seen me for X amount of time. What they remember me as is the person that they're going to treat me as or talk to me as, right? Now, I've grown, but they don't know that, and I don't even know how to, I don't know what that feels like, looks like, or anything. I don't know how it's going to apply to life in general and what it's going to look like. So when they're talking, as much as I'm cringing, like, dude, I don't want to hear that nonsense, right? You're talking to me like I'm fucking 20, 21, and a teenager, and it's like, I don't need your validation. You know what I mean? I don't need to, I had grown in that way, but I at the time, I don't think I was ready to kind of step outside of myself. So I had to do some more, in that department, I had to grow more. And like with that, like I said, pain's a great motivator. I had to bang my head some more times. I had to realize that what's my agenda? What's my motive? I never looked at those things. So like, if I'm uncomfortable in the past, what I do is without even realizing it, right? The intent is irrelevant. If God forbid Joe's uncomfortable, right? Like, what can I do? You need to make me comfortable. I'm not going to say it out loud, but what can I do to, so I'm comfortable? Fuck you, right? Not that I'm thinking fuck you, but I'm so uncomfortable that I can't think of anyone but me. And so when I came home, as far as that goes, there was an adjustment. The biggest adjustment was showing up for everyday life, work. I thought that, I thought I was just going to grab a bag of money for the rest of my life. I did. I still have these fucking thoughts, right? I still think I thought it was easy come, easy go. And I thought that it'd always be like that. And it proved true for a short period of time. But as far as, like I talked about my dad, the firefighter, and it's like, who wants to... It didn't serve any purpose. It's actually something that I still struggle with, where I never, the work ethic that, my father showed me through action and stuff, but I wanted easy, fast. I wanted, I wanted everything without doing any work, right? I want to get in shape without going to the gym, right? I want these things and I don't want to earn them. And in turn, what it's cost me is a lot of wasted time, a lot of, that's the stuff that really, that I think about, and why I'm trying to do things differently, and why I try to just, focus in the present, and these little cliches, these little things that may sound corny or whatnot. When I think of the word corny, I check myself now, because I'm like, Joe, your thinking was fucking ridiculous. Your thinking was warped. Your thinking was twisted, right? And I have to remind myself that, the fact that I'm able to do it and acknowledge it is great, but now I got to put it into action. And, the work ethic, just feeling like, all right, scheming, scamming, what's the next move? What's the next score, right? Because that right there, when I'm thinking like that, it doesn't feel good anymore, right? Because I know the truth. And if I am getting if the endorphins are kicking in, if I'm getting high off that and that feeling and that thinking, I got problems. You know what I mean? That indictment's fucking is coming, you know? And as we both know, it doesn't get less. They're not gonna give me less than 111 months. If I, you know, next time I go, it's gonna get worse. You know what I mean? And so it really doesn't matter whether Joe comes from a good family, whether Joe thinks that, you know, I'm a good guy at heart. You know what I mean? That right there is something that I have to constantly remind myself and it's scary to think because, you know, they'll go off. If me and you go in front of the judge, if you went in front of the judge today, they're not thinking of Ian with the podcast. They're not thinking of Ian helping people, you know, spreading a message, like showing like that, like, you know, reform, showing that, you know, recovering from like, you know, adversity and like bouncing back and like all these things that are like pivotal and like that, like actually define who you are. Right. And you've always been that, but like it just builds that character. And like, you know, maybe it's something that you need to realize and you need to believe in you. Right. Because other people see it. Right. When you're doing your thing. And if you went in front of a judge, that judge is going to look at that paper and and you're going to be the person that like did that Fed time. You're going to be the person that for that crime and stuff like that. You know, I'm 46 years old. I go in front of the judge for a driving offense. They're talking about in 2000 when I fucking, you know what I mean, robbed an armored truck or did 10 years in prison. It's like, and I don't get to raise my hand or like, I don't have a voice. I can't be like, here I am to the public defender because like, you know, because all that fantasy in my head about like those bags of money I was going to grab, it's like, you know, weighing the options, like there's too many people relying and counting on me and that I've let down already that like, you know, like I don't want to do it to myself, but sometimes a lot of the time, you know, thank God I have the people that I can think of that, you know, they deserve so much better, you know? But yeah, I don't want to do that. And I'm sure, you know, what you're doing, like that's for the rest of our life. We go in front of that judge, you know, it's something to keep in mind. I guess it's a healthy fear in a sense. What's
your life look like now? What do you do now?
So my life looks like today, I am in recovery. I learned about, you know, so they talk about sobriety, right? I didn't know that like, you know, I drink Bud Light, I'm 6'2", 220, right? Like I don't fall, I'm not a mess, right? If we can't have a conversation, I'm going home, right? So, you know, and I think I'm the life of the party, right? Like, and here I am, like happy-go-lucky, like why would that be a problem, right? You know, alcoholic, that's someone that fucking drinks out of a brown paper bag and stems outside a liquor store or whatever. Well, I found that Joe, another, you know, like all these things that I would have loved to believe, right? Because they worked for me and they served me at the time. That wasn't the case, right? So when I was educated about it, and it's like, bro, this isn't a moral thing, like, you know, it's hereditary and like it's a disease. And like when you put a drink in you, right, all bets are off. The worst thing that can happen when you put a drink in you, and I can walk outside and hit the liquor store and grab a pint of Fireball right now, right? I'll feel good, right? I'll drink it. I'll feel good for about a half hour, if that. And what I know today is like, then I'll feel like a complete bag of shit because it's not about hiding it from anyone else. It's about what I know that now it's on, right? Now, once I do that, I can't stop. And I've proven it in the past, right? Because with someone like me, if I'm not failing, I'm not growing. And if I'm not willing to fucking fail and like sit with myself, that I never was able to do it until I was locked up. That's what it came down to. Like, kid, you know, you don't have the balls, you don't have the courage, you think you're the man, but really you're fucking, you're proven to be a coward. Like what you're doing isn't, you know what I mean? Like you can't even sit with yourself, right? And who wants to show that side of them? Who wants to be vulnerable, right? So the masks have to just keep coming. When I learned about that in 2018, you know, I realized like it's so much more like sobriety. Like I can't put a drink or a substance, right? And it's not about labeling. It's like, you know, I can justify all day long what I do when I do it, like, you know, but it's really what it comes down to is like knowing, you know, being educated and knowing what I do today. And like, that's even that I look back and it's like, I'm so grateful for it. In 2018, I learned about sobriety. I learned that the phenomenon of craving they talk about, like when I put something in my system, right? It's not in being alcoholic and having an addicted personality, being an addict, calling it whatever you want, right? It really, all those things, those labels that we tell ourselves, or at least I would, in being from that, you know, that judgmental and that cliquey and that fear, living in fear, and God forbid someone thinks this of me. It's like, bro, you're the last person, first of all, to like, whatever people are going to think, they're going to think, right? But like to sit there and not live in truth and not, and and self-negative, that the negative affirmations rather than the positive ones, and feeling shitty. But how could you build any self-esteem? How could you build any confidence when you're not taking care of yourself? All you're doing is pouring alcohol, you're taking a substance, whatever you're doing, over over the feelings, and you're numbing yourself, right? There's no growth there, right? That's purgatory on earth. And what I've found out, once I waved the white flag and I needed to be broke, I needed to feel that much pain. When the pain got greater, I say it's like a pendulum, or like the laws of justice you see. When the pain got greater than what this told me from when I was a kid, right? That scared kid, or what I thought that you may have thought, negative, that I may create or made true or not, it's really irrelevant. When the pain got greater than that, for me, that was like the game changer. That's when I was able to, all right, now we're like at square one. Where do we go from here? And with that being said, like I look back and I'm grateful for that pain, right? Because like I needed to feel that, and it needed to be greater than what this told me and what I thought that you may have thought. And when it got greater, I was like willing to like, all right, you know what, dude, I'm a fucking train wreck, right? At least fucking mentally, emotionally, I feel it like. And to wake up like that, like, and having, they talk about like not being afraid to die, being afraid to live. It's like, people say that, waking up and like not wanting to show up for life, not wanting to, like, I'm not trying to, like, first of all, I'm not doing that to my family. I may feel like, yeah, dude, I don't want to feel like a lie. Like, I'd rather be dead, like, to have that idle thought, which like human beings do, right? Because like that's an emotion and like feeling, but it's a sad one. It's very heavy. And then, to wake up like that every day and have no solution, not know what to do with those feelings, and not, and then in turn being so loyal and so proud and so like, loving your family so much, where it's like, I will suffer, I will curl up, I will fucking feel like death for as long as I have to before I'll ever put them through that. But what you're doing is like, you're not changing nothing. And what you're doing is you're suffering, right? They say like pain's inevitable and suffering is optional. So you're choosing to suffer, right? That's a choice. You're choosing to suffer. And you're so fucking broken and so hurt that you actually have to fucking manifest these fucking foolish thoughts of, these egotistical thoughts that like you're doing your family a favor by not doing that, right? Like, dude, you're fucking mental, bro. What, maybe like go get some help. Maybe ask for help. Maybe like put down that, humble yourself, put the ego away, ask for help, say like, dude, I can't do this on my own. Like, stop being like part of instead of like, apart from and isolating and being, I don't want to carry that weight anymore. I don't want to, that's to me, it's a burden, that's never how it was supposed to be, and thank God, someone else can carry that title now. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't recommend it or suggest it, but like, I'm not that strong, nor do I want to be. You know what I mean? Sometimes like, I need another person to lift me up and help me out. And, that's okay as well, and like I said, the best part, what I've learned in, first the sobriety, and then if anyone knows this that have been familiar with it, I certainly didn't. I learned about it in 2018. I rode that pink cloud, that wave for like 3 years. I ended up staying sober for another year and a half, but at that 3-year mark, life had happened. And like Joe, that mentally stunted, emotionally stunted, teenager that's now, 30-something years old, doesn't know how to fucking regulate his emotions, can't handle this thing in life, right? That threw at him. And he has like essentially a nervous breakdown, or like goes off the rails. And, and then the ego by default has to kick in and like, I'm going to stay sober. Like, fuck you. Like no one's going to, I'll show you. When I start saying, I'll show you, I lose sight of what I'm doing, because it's not about, like I say, that I need to, you need to focus on yourself. So the recovery aspect, because sobriety in general, if you're just sober, they talk about a dry drunk. When someone just stops putting alcohol or drugs in their system or something, anything, gambling. I was a gambler, bro, right? I lost so much that I never had the urge again. I was betting on cricket in fucking St. John's on my fucking honeymoon, bro. At 3, 4 in the morning, I'm in paradise and I'm fucking I'm betting on cricket, just fucking flip of a coin, and everything I touched, I was losing, you know. So that's my personality. That's like the impulsive, like that's the addictive behavior. Anything to make me not have to fucking just sit and feel what I'm feeling. So the sobriety aspect, if you're anything like me, you know, that's great. You put down a drink, you put down a drug. If it was only that easy. Because they say like that's the drink and the drug is someone's solution, you know, or the gambling or whatever the case may be. Women, whatever someone does to get outside of themselves. Women go shopping, you know. That's the solution. That's exactly what, that makes total sense. What do you do if you're an alcoholic and addict? Yeah, drink or put a substance in your system, right? Any mind or mood altering substance. That's the answer, but that's not their, you know, that's the solution. That's their solution. It's just, it's really their thinking is so twisted, you know, like that's right. Yeah. You put a drink or a drug, but that's not your real problem is your thinking that I was taught. And, that takes some work, bro. You know, you know, I'm certainly, I don't do it perfectly, but what I do, what I am grateful for in that it's taught me is like, you know, the recovery aspect. There's a lot of recovering to do, right? Those 111 months, that time that I was away, that time that you know, when I went down that corner at 15 or 16, and, you know, I started running on fear and consumed by fear and basing my decision choices on that as opposed to like, you know, forming any type of identity. You know, that's why I'm, you know, Billy Madison. That's why I like the big kid, which like we can laugh about, but like it's at some point it's like, you know, it's time to grow up a little bit, right? We can still have fun, but like, when it's time, you know, it's time to grow up a little bit, you know, and that right there is, you know, slow and steady and like, you know, progress, not perfection they talk about. I know this, and as far as the recovery thing goes, and anyone out there that's struggling or whatnot, because it's wild, it's crazy out there. Anyone that can relate or that this resonates with, if there was a reason, I'm sure there's been plenty, right? When Joe's having a bad day or Joe's feeling off, and you know, like I said, the white flag was waved. There's no going back. I'm never gonna. I'll do my best to try to think so, but I'll never have fun again, right? I've been there, done that. I did have some fun as a kid, right? Right, but those days are over. I'll never have fun again if I put something in my system for like, you know, because I know that if I do that, it's going to be because I'm emotionally like. I can't handle something. I'm overwhelmed with life. Like it's too much. And that's not an option anymore. So as far as the recovery goes, if there was a time when I could, you know, if anyone had given me over the past 6 years a reason to like say, fuck this, these people are frauds, they're full of shit, they're phony, like they did this, they gave me bad information, you know, if I could do that, I'm a human being, right? I'm no different than anyone else. If I could have done that, I would have already done it, right? It doesn't feel good to think like that, but I'm sure that like that has crossed my mind where like even subconsciously I've been like, give me a fucking reason to not have to do this, not have to, you know, so I can be like, okay, see, like Joe got this. And no one has in the past 6 years, no one has. We've been in prison, right? Yeah, we've been with good guys, right? We can pride ourselves on being good guys and stand-up guys. That's great, right? That's always been in us, though, to begin with. We've also been with, like, the dregs of society and, like, some real sick, like, ugly, dark demons, right? Some people that just don't belong fucking in society, right? And, like, this, as far as I'm concerned, like, listen, there's no coming back from, you know what I mean? Like, they're a lost soul, and I don't make the rules, you know what I mean? That's I didn't make this shit up, you know, that's just what it is. And, but as far as, you know, people lifting you up and like encouraging you and literally wanting you good for you, wanting like to see you succeed, wanting to see good things for you without there's no agenda. They're not looking for anything. Like, what is that, bro? That shit to me, it's like, now it's like this void, this fucking hole that's been there, that I never fucking filled with anything but like more pollution and more fucking darkness. Now it's like, wait a minute, like, that's why I say love trumps all, right? It's like, oh, like, I mean, it may make me cringe or whatever, but it's like, there's something to be said about it. And then when you're able to give that back to another person, you're able to help another person, it's like, now it's like, wait, I'm turning into a human being, bro. You know what I mean? Like, you know, just in a person and forming an identity and like in being useful, having a purpose. It goes back to what you said, like that. I guess it makes it all worth it. Where you said, as that kid, did I have aspirations, dreams, and like, did I have a career and know what I wanted to do? No, I didn't. But I can't say today that what I've learned through my pain, through my struggle, and through through the trials and tribulations is that, you know, I wanna get better so that I can be better and like do better for for the people I care about, for people in general. You know, that right there is like the most fulfilling thing that no high, no score has ever made me more fulfilled and fed me that way. You know, and yeah, it's and I love it. You know, it's nice to talk about. You know, it's heavy shit. It's like, but it's
therapeutic.
Yeah, man. Yeah, just bill my insurance after this, bro.
Well, Joe, I appreciate you coming out here today to chat, man. This has been a good conversation. I'm glad you were able to get a lot off your chest today. You could always tell when someone has a lot built up.
Yeah, bro. Right? Yeah, I always do. Yeah.
Yeah, well, definitely keep in touch, man. You know, next time I'm in Boston, I go there every few months. So
absolutely.
I'll
No, I'm going to bring you through the hood. I'm going to bring you through Charlestown. We'll hook up with Richie G. Johnny Bot.
Yeah. Tommy G2, who does all the, him who does all the clips and stuff. I love those guys. Prosciutto Poppy.
Yeah.
They're doing big things too with Wahlberg and all that.
Yeah, we're putting Boston on the map, Massachusetts for that matter.
I'm putting Connecticut.
England.
I got Connecticut. You guys got Boston.
Yeah.
But safe travels back. And if you ever back out this way, I got to introduce you to AJ too.
100%. Yeah, I would love to meet him. Yes.
We'll get you some merch and all that too.
Yes, I would love that. Thank you, my friend.
Yeah, thank you, brother.